The radio crackled with static at 3:47 hours, then silence. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez pressed his headset closer, sweat mixing with desert grit on his forehead. 300 meters below, 8 Navy SEALs lay pinned behind crumbling concrete barriers in what used to be a marketplace in Kandahar province. The intelligence had been wrong, catastrophically wrong. Bravo 6, this is Overwatch. We count 40-plus hostiles converging on your position. You need to move now. The voice belonged to Captain Mitchell, whose oversight from the command post felt increasingly meaningless as rocket-propelled grenades whistled overhead. SEAL Team Leader Marcus Hendricks keyed his radio, his voice steady despite the chaos. Overwatch Bravo 6, we're boxed in. Multiple technical vehicles, coordinated movement. This isn't some ragtag cell. They knew we were coming. A burst of automatic weapons fire punctuated his transmission, concrete chips raining down on his team. The SEALs had been hunting a high-value target, a Taliban commander responsible for coordinating IED attacks along Highway 1. What they'd found instead was a trap, perfectly orchestrated. The compound they'd breached was empty except for mannequins dressed in military gear. By the time they realized the deception, insurgents had surrounded the entire district. "Sir," Rodriguez whispered to Captain Mitchell, "close air support is 40 minutes out. Apache Squadron diverted to emergency medevac in Helmand. We've got nothing in the immediate area." His fingers danced across the tactical display, searching for any available assets. The screen showed a depressing reality. Their nearest friendly aircraft was a fuel tanker, useless for providing fire support. Hendrick's voice crackled through again, more urgent now. "Overwatch, we need something. Anything. Williams took shrapnel in the leg and they're setting up for a final push." In the background, the distinctive whistle of incoming mortars could be heard. Captain Mitchell stared at the overhead imagery, watching red icons multiply around the blue diamond representing Bravo 6. His jaw clenched. These weren't just any SEALs. They were his SEALs, men he'd trained with, bled with. The thought of losing them to inadequate intelligence made his stomach churn. "Rodriguez, what about the National Guard unit? Any rotary wing assets?" "Negative, sir. Their Blackhawks are down for maintenance. I'm showing." "Wait." Rodriguez paused, squinting at his screen. A single aircraft icon appeared at the edge of his radar coverage, flying low and fast from the south. The identification tag read something unusual, a call sign he'd never seen before. "Sir, there's something here. Single aircraft A-10 Thunderbolt. Call sign." He paused, checking the readout again. "Reaper 77. She's not responding to our frequencies, but she's heading directly toward the contact area." Captain Mitchell leaned forward, hope flickering in his chest like a match struck in darkness. The insurgents below had no idea that Salvation wore titanium armor and carried a 7-barrel rotary cannon capable of firing depleted uranium rounds at 70 rounds per second. They had no idea that Lieutenant Colonel Cassandra, Reaper, Thorne had been listening to their radio chatter for the past 20 minutes. Her A-10's electronic warfare suite intercepting every desperate transmission. Cassandra banked hard left, dropping to 200 feet above the jagged peaks surrounding the valley. Her aircraft, call sign Reaper 77, was a battle-scarred veteran of 3 deployments. Bullet holes from her last mission in Mosul had been patched but not painted over, giving the twin-engine aircraft a weathered, predatory appearance. The nose art, a grim Reaper riding a lightning bolt, had faded but remained visible beneath layers of desert camouflage. She'd been returning from a solo reconnaissance mission when she'd picked up the SEAL's distress calls. Officially, she wasn't supposed to engage without clearance. Unofficially, she'd never been one to follow rules when lives hung in the balance. "Reaper 77 to any station. I'm 5 minutes from coordinates provided. Request immediate target description and friendly positions." Her voice cut through the static with the confidence of someone who'd done this dance before. Captain Mitchell nearly dropped his coffee. "Reaper 77, This is Overwatch. We have 8 friendlies pinned down in the marketplace, surrounded by an estimated 40 hostiles with technical vehicles. Immediate close air support requested. There was a pause before Cassandra responded, her tone shifting to something harder, more focused. Overwatch, Reaper 77. I copy 8 souls in need. Mark your friendlies with IR strobes. I'm coming in hot. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, affectionately known as the Warthog, wasn't built for speed or elegance. It was built to kill tanks and infantry, to loiter over battlefields and provide sustained fire support. Its twin turbofan engine sat high on the fuselage, positioned to minimize damage from ground fire. The cockpit was surrounded by a titanium bathtub capable of stopping 23 cannon rounds. Cassandra had been flying Warthogs for 8 years, accumulating over 2,000 combat hours across Iraq and Afghanistan. She'd started as an outsider in the close air support community, a woman in a field dominated by men who questioned whether she had the stomach for air-to-ground combat. She'd proven them wrong repeatedly, earning her call sign during a mission over Fallujah, where she'd single-handedly destroyed an entire insurgent convoy. The marketplace appeared ahead, smoke rising from burning vehicles. Through her targeting pod, she could see muzzle flashes from dozens of weapons, all directed toward a cluster of concrete barriers where the SEALs had taken shelter. Technical vehicles, pickup trucks mounted with heavy machine guns, circled like vultures, their crews confident in their numerical superiority. Bravo 6, Reaper 77, I have visual on your position. Pop smoke to confirm location. Down below, Hendricks grabbed a smoke grenade, pulling the pin and tossing it over the barrier. Purple smoke billowed into the morning air, a desperate signal in a sea of chaos. Cassandra smiled grimly, her gloved hand steady on the controls. I see purple smoke. Danger close authorized. Affirmative, Reaper. Danger close authorized. We're running out of time. She rolled the A-10 into a steep dive, the aircraft's nose pointing directly at the largest concentration of enemy fighters. Her thumb hovered over the trigger for the GAU-8 Avenger cannon, 30 millimeters of rotating death housed in the aircraft's nose. The weapon was so large that the A-10 had essentially been built around it. The insurgents below had spread out through the marketplace, using overturned cars and abandoned stalls for cover. They moved with practiced coordination, suggesting this wasn't their first ambush. Several technical vehicles provided heavy fire support, their mounted weapons keeping the SEALs pinned while dismounted fighters maneuvered for better positions. Cassandra's targeting system locked onto the nearest technical vehicle, a white Toyota pickup with a Soviet-era machine gun mounted in the bed. The crosshairs settled on the engine block as she squeezed the trigger. The GAU-8 cannon erupted with a distinctive sound, a deep, grinding roar like an industrial saw cutting through metal. Depleted uranium rounds streaked toward the target at over 3,000 feet per second, each projectile capable of penetrating tank armor. The technical vehicle simply disintegrated, metal fragments and body parts scattered across 50 yards of marketplace. The effect on enemy morale was immediate and devastating. Fighters who had been advancing confidently suddenly found themselves face-to-face with an aircraft specifically designed to destroy armored vehicles and infantry. The A-10's reputation preceded it. Insurgents throughout Afghanistan had learned to fear the distinctive sound of its cannon. Reaper 77, good hits on technical vehicle. You've got their attention now, Hendricks reported, his voice carrying the first note of hope in hours. Cassandra banked hard right, setting up for another attack run. Through her canopy, she could see insurgents scattering in all directions, their coordinated assault dissolving into panicked retreat. Some tried to find better cover, while others attempted to relocate their heavy weapons to engage her aircraft. Overwatch, Reaper 77. I'm seeing multiple technical vehicles and dismounted infantry. Request permission to engage all hostile targets in the immediate area. Captain Mitchell didn't hesitate. Reaper 7-7, you are cleared hot. Eliminate all hostile forces in the marketplace vicinity. Friendlies are marked with purple smoke. They came around for its second attack run, this time targeting a cluster of insurgents who had taken positions behind a concrete wall. Cassandra switched from the cannon to her wing-mounted rockets, each Hydra 70 capable of creating a 20-foot blast radius. She pickled off 4 rockets in rapid succession, watching as the concrete wall disappeared in a series of orange fireballs. Secondary explosions indicated that she'd hit an ammunition cache, sending additional shockwaves through the enemy formation. The marketplace, which minutes earlier had been a carefully orchestrated kill zone, was rapidly becoming a graveyard for Taliban fighters. But the insurgents weren't finished. A shoulder-fired surface-to-air missile streaked upward from a rooftop position, its heat-seeking warhead locked onto the A-10's engine signature. Cassandra saw the launch flash and immediately deployed chaff and flares, banking hard left to break the missile's lock. The missile detonated harmlessly in the cloud of countermeasures, but its launch revealed the insurgents' desperation. They were willing to expose their anti-aircraft assets rather than allow the SEALs to escape. Missile launch, Cassandra called out, more for the benefit of the ground controllers than from any sense of panic. She'd been shot at hundreds of times during her career and had developed an almost supernatural calm under fire. Down in the marketplace, the SEALs were finally able to move. With the enemy's attention focused upward, Hendricks led his team in a tactical advance toward a more defensible position near an abandoned gas station. The wounded SEAL, Williams, was helped along by 2 teammates, his leg wound bleeding but not life-threatening. Reaper 7-7, we're moving to better cover. Keep the pressure on those bastards, Hendricks transmitted, his team's movement covered by another strafing run from the A-10. Cassandra had spotted the missile launch site and was already lining up her attack. The rooftop position was a 3-story building on the edge of the marketplace, its flat roof providing an excellent firing position for anti-aircraft weapons. She could see the missile team reloading, preparing for another shot. The GAU-8 cannon spoke again, its depleted uranium rounds chewing through concrete and steel as if they were paper. The entire top floor of the building collapsed inward, taking the missile team with it. A cloud of dust and debris obscured the target area, but secondary explosions confirmed that she'd eliminated not just the missile team, but their entire ammunition supply. Good kill, Reaper 7-7. That was their anti-air position, Rodriguez reported from the command post, watching the engagement unfold on satellite imagery. But even as one threat was eliminated, others remained. Technical vehicles were repositioning throughout the marketplace, their crews determined to complete their ambush despite the devastating air support. The insurgents had invested too much in this operation to abandon it easily. Cassandra checked her fuel and ammunition status. She had enough gas for another 20 minutes of combat operations and plenty of ordnance remaining. More importantly, she had something that couldn't be measured by gauges or computers, an absolute determination to ensure that every SEAL made it home alive. The battle was far from over, but the tide was beginning to turn. The A-10 circled the battlefield like a mechanical vulture, its pilot scanning for threats with the methodical precision of a surgeon. Cassandra had transitioned from reactive to proactive, no longer simply responding to enemy fire, but actively hunting down insurgent positions before they could endanger the SEALs. Through her targeting pod, she identified 3 more technical vehicles attempting to reposition around the marketplace perimeter. The crews thought they were being clever, using buildings and abandoned vehicles for concealment as they tried to set up crossfires. They didn't understand that thermal imaging made their heat signatures visible through most cover. Bravo 6, Reaper 7-7. I've got eyes on 3 technical vehicles moving to flank your position. Stay put while I clear your 6. Hendricks acknowledged the transmission while his team consolidated their new position behind the gas station. William's leg wound had been field-dressed, and the SEAL medic confirmed he could still move if necessary. The team's spirits had improved dramatically since the A-10's arrival. They'd gone from writing their last letters home to planning their extraction route. The first technical vehicle died quickly, its crew never realizing they'd been spotted. The GAU-8's depleted uranium rounds punched through the pickup truck's engine block and continued into the crew compartment, eliminating the threat in less than 2 seconds. The second vehicle tried to run, its driver gunning the engine in a desperate attempt to reach better cover. Cassandra led the target perfectly, her rounds walking up the street behind the fleeing pickup before catching it in the rear axle. The truck tumbled end over end, spilling ammunition and body parts across the asphalt. The third technical vehicle, having witnessed the fate of its companions, simply abandoned their position and fled toward the outskirts of town. 3 technical vehicles eliminated. You've got breathing room now, Bravo 6. The marketplace had transformed from an organized ambush site into a scene of devastation. Burning vehicles sent black smoke columns into the morning sky, while scattered ammunition continued to cook off in secondary explosions. The carefully planned insurgent assault had devolved into a rout. But Cassandra wasn't finished. Her rules of engagement were clear: eliminate all hostile forces in the immediate area to prevent them from regrouping and threatening other coalition units. She began systematically working through the remaining enemy positions, using her cannon and rockets to destroy weapon emplacements and fortified positions. Captain Mitchell watched the engagement from his command post, simultaneously impressed and concerned. The A-10 pilot was operating with deadly efficiency, but she was also flying dangerously low and making multiple attack runs over the same area. Eventually, the insurgents would get lucky with a lucky shot or hidden missile. Reaper 77, Overwatch. You've been on station for 15 minutes. What's your fuel status? Cassandra glanced at her fuel gauge, calculating flight time versus tactical necessity. Overwatch. I've got another 20 minutes of playtime before I need to think about heading home. These guys started something they can't finish. Her confidence was infectious. Down in the marketplace, the SEALs had begun advancing methodically through areas that the A-10 had cleared, collecting intelligence and ensuring no insurgents remained hidden. They moved with renewed purpose, no longer the hunted but the hunters. The transformation wasn't lost on anyone monitoring the radio frequencies. A mission that had seemed destined to become a tragic footnote in the war's history was turning into a textbook example of effective close air support. The last major insurgent position was a fortified compound on the marketplace's eastern edge. Intelligence indicated it served as a local Taliban headquarters, complete with underground bunkers and multiple escape routes. The building's thick walls and defensive positions made it a formidable target, but Cassandra had dealt with similar structures before. She made her approach from the west, using the morning sun to mask her aircraft's silhouette. The compound's defenders had positioned a heavy machine gun on the roof, its crew scanning the sky for threats. They spotted the A-10 too late. The first burst from the GAU-8 cannon eliminated the rooftop position entirely, concrete and steel disintegrating under the impact of dozens of depleted uranium rounds. Cassandra continued her dive, strafing the compound's main building with surgical precision. Each burst was carefully aimed to maximize damage while minimizing the risk of hitting hidden civilians. The building's facade collapsed inward, revealing the reinforced interior structure. Secondary explosions indicated the presence of ammunition and fuel storage, sending fireballs climbing into the sky. The compound that had served as the insurgents' command center was reduced to smoking rubble in less than 30 seconds. Compound destroyed, Bravo 6. Looks like their headquarters just got a change in management. For the first time since the mission began, laughter could be heard over the radio. The SEALs were no longer fighting for survival. They were completing their mission objectives with the kind of overwhelming fire support that made American military doctrine so effective. But even as victory seemed assured, Cassandra remained vigilant. The insurgents had demonstrated sophisticated planning and coordination in setting up their ambush. It was possible they had additional assets positioned outside the immediate battle area. Her caution proved justified. As the A-10 completed another orbit around the marketplace, her threat warning system detected radar illumination from the south. Someone was painting her aircraft with targeting radar, possibly preparing to engage with a more sophisticated surface-to-air missile system. Overwatch, Reaper 77. I'm being painted by unknown radar source, bearing 180. Advise any friendly air defense assets in the area. Captain Mitchell immediately began coordinating with higher headquarters while Rodriguez checked the air defense picture. The nearest friendly SAM site was over 50 miles away, well beyond the range needed to illuminate Cassandra's aircraft. Reaper 77, negative on friendly systems. That's a hostile radar. Recommend immediate evasive action. Cassandra was already moving, diving toward the deck while deploying chaff and flares in case a missile had already been launched. The A-10's low-altitude capabilities were legendary. It could fly effectively at altitudes that would be dangerous for most other aircraft. She intended to use every bit of that capability now. The radar lock broke as she descended below the surrounding ridgelines, using terrain masking to defeat the targeting system. But the incident served as a reminder that the insurgents might have capabilities beyond what had already been displayed. The ambush had been too well planned to rely solely on small arms and technical vehicles. As she climbed back to attack altitude, Cassandra made a mental note to remain extra vigilant. The mission was far from over. The battlefield below told a story of devastating air power applied with surgical precision. What had been a coordinated insurgent stronghold now resembled a scrapyard, with destroyed vehicles and collapsed buildings scattered throughout the marketplace. Smoke drifted across the scene like fog, carrying the acrid smell of burning fuel and explosives. Cassandra keyed her radio, her voice carrying the matter-of-fact tone of someone who just completed routine paperwork rather than single-handedly turned the tide of a desperate battle. Bravo 6, Reaper 77. Battlefield assessment shows all major hostile positions neutralized. You're cleared to continue your mission. Down among the rubble, Staff Sergeant Hendricks led his team through the systematic process of clearing remaining structures and collecting intelligence. They moved with the confidence of professionals who knew they had overwhelming fire support overhead, but also with the caution of veterans who understood that complacency killed. The wounded SEAL, Williams, had insisted on participating despite his leg injury. His teammates had fashioned a makeshift crutch from debris, allowing him to maintain mobility while they searched the destroyed compound. The medic stayed close, monitoring his condition and ready to call for immediate extraction if necessary. Reaper 77, we're finding significant intelligence materials in the rubble. Looks like your target assessment was correct. This was definitely a command and control node. Hendrick's voice carried a note of satisfaction as his team uncovered laptops, communication equipment, and documents that had survived the bombardment. From her overhead position, Cassandra continued her vigilant patrol. The threat warning system had remained quiet since the earlier radar contact, but she'd learned never to trust silence completely. The insurgents had already demonstrated their capability for sophisticated planning. It was reasonable to assume they had contingency plans. Her fuel gauge showed another 12 minutes of loiter time before she'd need to consider heading home. Enough time to ensure the SEALs completed their mission and began their extraction, but not enough to provide extended coverage if additional threats emerged. Overwatch, Reaper 77. I'll need to depart station in 12 minutes unless you can arrange tanker support. The nearest aerial refueling track was over an hour away, making that option impractical given the tactical situation. Captain Mitchell had already been working that problem. Reaper 77, Overwatch. We've got Apache support inbound, ETA 15 minutes. You can pass control to them before departing station. The arrival of dedicated attack helicopters would provide the SEALs with continued close air support, while allowing Cassandra to return to base. Apache helicopters carried different capabilities than the A-10, more precise weapons systems, and better low-altitude maneuverability. But they lacked the Warthog's ability to absorb damage and maintain operations in high-threat environments. As if summoned by the discussion of threats, Cassandra's threat warning system activated again. This time, the radar signature was different, mobile and moving rapidly from the northwest. Someone was approaching the battlefield with military-grade tracking equipment. Multiple radar contacts, bearing 320, range approximately 8 miles and closing, appear to be mobile platforms, possibly technical vehicles with upgraded electronic warfare capabilities. The new threat represented a significant escalation. Basic insurgent groups didn't typically possess sophisticated radar systems, suggesting that this ambush involved better trained and equipped forces than initially assessed. The SEALs weren't just dealing with local Taliban. They'd stumbled into something much more dangerous. Bravo 6, Overwatch. We're seeing new contacts approaching from the northwest. Recommend you expedite intelligence collection and prepare for immediate extraction. Hendricks didn't need to be told twice. His team had already gathered the most critical materials from the destroyed compound, and Williams' condition was stable but not improving. They'd accomplished their primary mission objective and eliminated a significant insurgent capability, but staying longer would risk encountering whatever was approaching from the northwest. Reaper 77, we're consolidating for extraction. Can you give us eyes on those new contacts? Cassandra banked toward the northwest, climbing to get a better view over the ridgelines. Her targeting pod revealed a convoy of 6 vehicles moving rapidly along a dirt road. Not the typical pickup trucks they'd been fighting, but actual military-style vehicles with what appeared to be mounted radar and communication equipment. Bravo 6, I count 6 military-style vehicles approaching your position. This isn't your typical insurgent cell. These guys have serious hardware. Her voice carried a new note of concern as she realized the true scope of what the SEALs had stumbled into. The implications were staggering. The ambush hadn't been a simple Taliban operation, but something much more sophisticated, possibly involving foreign advisors or special forces. The carefully coordinated attack, the anti-aircraft missiles, and now the approaching convoy with advanced electronics suggested a level of planning and resources that went beyond typical insurgent capabilities. Captain Mitchell reached the same conclusion, his voice tense as he coordinated with higher headquarters. All stations, this is Overwatch. We may be dealing with a much larger threat than initially assessed. Recommend immediate extraction for Bravo 6 and priority intelligence analysis of all collected materials. The approaching convoy represented both opportunity and danger. If these were indeed foreign advisors or special forces, capturing or eliminating them would provide invaluable intelligence about insurgent capabilities and organization. But the risk to the SEALs was enormous. They were already operating at the limit of their endurance and ammunition supply. Cassandra made the decision that would define the rest of her career. Instead of preparing to depart station as planned, she turned toward the approaching convoy. Overwatch, Reaper 77. I'm going to take a closer look at our new friends. Might be worth rolling the dice on this one. The convoy was still 5 miles out, moving along a winding mountain road that provided multiple opportunities for ambush. If Cassandra could eliminate or disable the lead vehicles, The entire formation would be trapped on the narrow road with limited maneuver space. It was a classic close air support scenario, the kind she'd trained for extensively but rarely encountered in actual combat. She began her attack run from the south, using the morning sun and terrain features to mask her approach. The convoy's electronic warfare systems were focused forward, toward the marketplace where they expected to find the battle in progress. They weren't scanning for threats from behind. The lead vehicle was clearly a command unit, its roof bristling with communication antennas and what appeared to be a sophisticated radar dome. Cassandra centered her crosshairs on the vehicle's center mass and squeezed the trigger for a short burst from the GAU-8 cannon. The depleted uranium round struck the command vehicle with devastating effect, penetrating its armor and detonating its internal electronics in a shower of sparks and smoke. The vehicle veered off the road and tumbled down a steep embankment, taking its advanced equipment with it. The convoy's response was immediate and professional. The remaining vehicles spread out as much as the narrow road allowed, while their crews deployed portable anti-aircraft missiles and began setting up hasty defensive positions. This wasn't the panicked reaction of typical insurgents. These were trained soldiers operating according to established doctrine. Overwatch, Reaper 77, definite military personnel in that convoy. These aren't local Taliban. We've got foreign advisors or special forces. Her observation was punctuated by the launch of another surface-to-air missile, this one from a more sophisticated launcher than the shoulder-fired weapons encountered earlier. Cassandra defeated the missile with chaff and flares while simultaneously calling for immediate reinforcements. The situation had escalated beyond a simple close air support mission. They were now engaged with what appeared to be a significant enemy special operations unit. The convoy had stopped approximately 3 miles from the marketplace, its remaining vehicles positioned defensively along the road. Through her targeting pod, Cassandra could see personnel dismounting and establishing fighting positions among the rocks and vegetation flanking the road. Their movements were disciplined and coordinated, confirming her assessment that these were professional soldiers. Bravo 6 Overwatch. New threat is definitely military personnel, possibly foreign special forces. Recommend immediate extraction to predetermined rally point. Hendricks acknowledged while his team prepared to move. They'd collected substantial intelligence from the destroyed compound, but the approaching threat meant they couldn't remain in the area to exploit their success. The mission had transformed from intelligence gathering to survival and extraction. As the SEALs began their tactical withdrawal, Cassandra continued to engage the convoy with precision strikes. She destroyed 2 more vehicles with cannon fire, but the remaining units had found good cover among rock formations that provided protection from air attack. The engagement was settling into a stalemate, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Her fuel situation was becoming critical. Despite the importance of the engagement, she couldn't remain on station much longer without risking fuel exhaustion and losing the aircraft. The approaching Apache helicopters would provide continued support, but they lacked the A-10's heavy cannon and armor-penetrating capability. Overwatch, Reaper 77. I'm approaching bingo fuel. Need to turn over control to the Apache and head home. The admission was difficult. Leaving before the job was completely finished went against every instinct she developed during her career. Captain Mitchell understood the situation. Reaper 77, Overwatch. You've done outstanding work here today. The Apache can handle cleanup operations while you RTB. But as Cassandra prepared to depart, the convoy made one final attempt to reach the marketplace. The remaining vehicles broke cover simultaneously, racing along the road in a desperate bid to reach the SEALs before the helicopters arrived. It was a high-risk gamble that demonstrated their commitment to completing their mission. Cassandra had enough fuel for one final attack run, a single pass that would determine whether the enemy force reached the marketplace or was stopped short of their objective. She rolled the A-10 into a steep dive, lining up on the lead vehicle while calculating intercept angles and deflection shots. The GAU-8 cannon erupted one last time, its familiar roar echoing off the surrounding mountains. Depleted uranium rounds walked across the road, striking the lead vehicle and causing it to explode in a fireball that blocked the path for the following units. The convoy's final assault had been stopped less than a mile from their objective. Splash one more. That should keep them busy until the Apache arrive. Cassandra's voice carried exhaustion mixed with satisfaction as she turned toward home, her mission finally complete. The aftermath revealed the true scope of what had occurred. Intelligence analysis of the captured materials and destroyed equipment confirmed that the SEALs had stumbled into a major insurgent command and control facility, one that was being used to coordinate attacks throughout the region. The convoy had been a foreign advisory team, possibly Iranian or Russian, sent to evacuate key personnel and equipment before coalition forces could exploit their discovery. The mission's success had profound implications for ongoing counterinsurgency operations. The destruction of the command facility and advisory team would significantly degrade insurgent capabilities in the region, potentially preventing dozens of future attacks against coalition forces and Afghan civilians. But for those who had participated in the battle, the most significant outcome was simpler and more personal. 8 Navy SEALs were going home alive, thanks to the timely intervention of an A-10 pilot who had refused to abandon them when the situation seemed hopeless. As Cassandra flew toward base, her aircraft bearing the scars of another successful mission, she reflected on the morning's events. The engagement had demonstrated everything that made close air support such a critical capability: the ability to rapidly shift the tactical balance in favor of friendly ground forces, even when they were outnumbered and outgunned. Her radio crackled one final time as she approached the traffic pattern. "Reaper 77, this is Bravo 6. Words can't express our gratitude for what you did today. You saved 8 lives out there." Cassandra smiled beneath her oxygen mask, banking the battle-damaged A-10 toward the runway. "Bravo 6, Reaper 77, just another day at the office. Glad everyone's going home in one piece." The transmission was typical of her understated approach to heroism, but those who had monitored the engagement knew they'd witnessed something extraordinary. A single pilot in an aging aircraft had turned a potential disaster into a decisive victory, demonstrating the kind of individual courage and professional skill that defined American military aviation at its finest. The landing was smooth despite the aircraft's battle damage, and maintenance crews were already waiting to assess the extent of repairs needed. Bullet holes dotted the fuselage, and one engine showed signs of debris ingestion, but the A-10's legendary durability had allowed it to complete the mission and return safely. As Cassandra shut down the engines and began her post-flight procedures, she was already thinking about the next mission, the next group of soldiers who might need close air support in their darkest hour. For her, it truly was just another day at the office, but for 8 Navy SEALs and their families, it was the day that made all the difference. The sun climbed higher over the Afghan mountains, burning away the morning shadows that had concealed so much violence and heroism. In the marketplace below, cleanup crews were already beginning the long process of clearing debris and rebuilding what had been destroyed. The war would continue, as it always did, but this particular battle had ended in decisive victory for the forces of freedom and justice. And somewhere in the vast expanse of sky above the battlefield, the spirit of close air support lived on, ready to answer the next desperate call for help. The intelligence windfall from the destroyed compound kept analysts busy for weeks. Among the captured materials were detailed plans for coordinated attacks across 3 provinces, financial records showing foreign funding sources, and communication logs that revealed the extent of external support for insurgent operations. The SEALs had inadvertently uncovered one of the most significant intelligence coups of the entire Afghanistan campaign. But the strategic implications, however important, paled beside the human drama that had unfolded that morning. 8 families received phone calls confirming that their husbands, fathers, and sons were safe. 8 mothers slept peacefully that night, knowing their boys were coming home. 8 children would continue to have fathers to teach them how to throw a baseball, help with homework, and tuck them into bed. Cassandra Reaper Thorne had made that possible with 30 minutes of precise, devastating close air support. Her actions that morning would become legendary within the close air support community, studied at military schools and discussed in pilot-ready rooms across the Air Force. But for her, the mission's success was measured in simpler terms, the radio call confirming that all friendly personnel were safe and accounted for. The A-10 community had always prided itself on a singular mission focus, keeping American soldiers alive on the battlefield. Every pilot who strapped into a Warthog understood that their primary responsibility was to the 18-year-old infantryman pinned down by enemy fire, the special operations team surrounded and outnumbered, the convoy under attack in a remote valley. They were the cavalry, arriving at the last moment to turn desperate situations into survivable ones. Cassandra embodied that ethos perfectly. Her flying was aggressive but controlled, her weapons employment precise but devastating, her tactical decisions bold but calculated. She had transformed what should have been a catastrophic defeat into a textbook victory, demonstrating why the A-10 remained irreplaceable despite its age and the availability of newer, more technologically advanced aircraft. The mission also highlighted the critical importance of experienced pilots in high-stress situations. A less experienced aviator might have hesitated to engage without explicit authorization, might have been more cautious in weapon employment, might have been intimidated by the sophisticated enemy air defenses. Cassandra's 8 years of combat experience had given her the confidence and skill necessary to make split-second decisions under intense pressure. Her call sign, Reaper, had been earned during that earlier mission over Fallujah when she destroyed an entire insurgent convoy single-handedly. The name reflected both her lethal effectiveness and her grim determination to complete every mission successfully. Among A-10 pilots, call signs were badges of honor that captured essential aspects of personality and professional reputation. Reaper conveyed respect mixed with a healthy dose of fear, exactly the kind of pilot you wanted overhead when things went bad. The morning's events would be officially recognized through the military awards system, with Cassandra receiving a Distinguished Flying Cross for her actions, and the SEAL team members receiving various decorations for their courage under fire. The awards ceremony would be held months later at an air base in Europe, with families and senior officers in attendance to witness the formal recognition of heroism. But the real recognition came from within the military community itself.